Hey there, everybody. Mean, but not really Duke Alex here, and wanted to set this one up because this is a bit of an unusual situation. This is going to be one of our Patreon-backed interview episodes of the Dukes of Dice, which we call Holding Court. Now, when I first did this interview with Mike Primeau, who you'll hear from in a minute, it wasn't intended to be one of these full-length kinds of interviews. It was intended to be a shorter interview that we would tend to put in the news section. Really wanted to support Mike and what he's doing with his organization, Path of Play. As Mike and I were talking, it became pretty clear that there was a little too much there to squeeze into that 10-minute block that we would typically have. So, in order to let things breathe a little bit, let Mike tell his story, and let you understand his story, we're going to do this as a separate Holding Court episode. You won't hear the usual questions that we'll get from our Board Game Geek Guild in this one, but you will hear what I think is a pretty compelling story from Mike, and hopefully one that folks will listen to and take to heart. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Mike Primeau. I am joined right now by our good buddy, Mike Primeau, up in the Great White North, Canada. Mike, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. The Great White North, a part of which you're becoming more familiar with all the time. It's great to have you be somewhat of a surrogate brother.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And though I don't know if a lot of Canadians either don't count Quebec, or is it folks in Quebec, Quebecois, who don't count Canada? I'm not dead sure sometimes.
You know, if I answer that question, it'll mean no matter what I say, it will offend somebody. Let me just say that I love my country and I love everybody who lives in this country. I don't know if you know this, but they had a referendum years ago, and they had a vote whether or not Quebec was going to leave Canada, and by less than 1%, they decided to stay.
Man, well.
And I wish I could remember the year. I apologize for not remembering that, but I remember Peter Mansbridge from the CBC's face when that vote count was completed. And it may be, I have never asked him this, but I believe it is probably one of his most memorable moments in reporting live news. It was just an incredible event for Canadians all throughout, from coast to coast to coast.
Well, we've gotten way too deep into Canada for maybe most folks' liking, but for folks who don't know, Mike has been a good friend of the show for quite a while now, and works for the CBC, if I'm remembering that correctly.
That is true.
And did a podcast called Nights at the Gaming Table, documentary-style podcast. And Mike, just to give folks a little bit of a background, what was that podcast?
To me, that was a podcast that explored the life stories that people experienced through the hobby which they love, which we all love, which is board gaming. And we found some really incredible stories and opportunities to tell these stories in really unique ways. Our first episode was about Helena Capel, who all but abandoned her math textbook approved by the bosses of education and decided she wanted to teach her math curriculum only using modern day board games, at least as much as possible. And so we took an NPR-style approach and spent time in the classroom, developed what I thought was a compelling audio compilation of all the things that went on in this classroom. And it was really uplifting to hear about someone doing something like this. And what it did was it opened doors to questions. And the question from that episode was, how do we uphold that? Because if you only have one person doing it, as wonderful as it may be, it ends up with a shelf life if you don't have people following suit to build momentum for that kind of idea. And we felt like with the feedback that we got that there was a good reason to continue on with that podcast. And but a lot of things have changed this year, and right now it's on a hiatus, but I do hope one day that I can pick up where I left off.
Yeah, and just a quick word on that before we get to kind of the meat of things. Mm-hmm. Really, really cool concept in that it takes games seriously. It takes this fun hobby that we all know and love and treats it as if it's this big important thing, and doesn't just pass it off as child's play or something that's not as important, something that's frivolous. And so I always appreciate that approach, not to mention just the sheer level of quality of that podcast. So if folks get a chance, they should absolutely go back and listen to that. And I'm sure there are some fans looking forward to it getting off of hiatus at some point. But as you mentioned, there were some challenges that came up, Mike. And what did that look like? What has your 2017 look like?
It's been such an incredible journey these last 5-6 months. Somewhat unexpected, but also somewhat expected. We found out in January that our son Luke, who's now 3, he is actually going to be turning 4 in October. He was diagnosed with autism, and we were told about 6 months before the diagnosis that they were seeing red flags. Like his pediatrician had some concerns about the way he was lacking in his vocabulary and not making eye contact. Just the culmination of behaviors where doctors become concerned that, a young person might be on the spectrum. And the problem was that he was so young at the time that the medical doctor making the evaluation was so on the fence that we had to wait another 6 months for that final evaluation to come in. And so my wife and I were, I don't know if bracing ourselves was the word, but we just didn't know what to feel. And when you don't know what to feel, if you do that for too long, that in itself becomes incredibly stressful. And so when we got the diagnosis, in the strangest of ways, it felt like a big weight was lifted off and then this slightly lighter weight was put back on. And the reason I describe it that way is because we didn't really know what to feel. There's a lot of confusion when you get news like that. There's no finality to it. You only know that there's a road ahead that is probably going to, like the terrain of that journey is going to change every single day. You don't know what to expect. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of people to talk to. There's, where are you going to find your support system? What is life going to be like for this little child? Now, I should say right up front that he's been sort of deemed to be mild, which means he's verbal. He can communicate with us. We're very thankful for that. But we have met families who have kids on the spectrum who are not verbal, but yet they have found a way to communicate.
And you found out some pretty harsh realities pretty quickly, as you mentioned, diagnosed with autism on the mild side of the spectrum, and under how Canada deals with healthcare, it's trickier for you guys to get private therapy. Public therapy, no issues, but it's a waiting list if you want to get the funding for private therapy. And so as a result of that, that's going to put a financial strain on anyone, including you guys. And you took some, I think for a board game enthusiast, pretty extreme measures to deal with that, right?
We didn't know what challenges we were going to be faced with, but one of the earliest hurdles we had to find a way to get over was trying to find a way to pay for his therapy. A lot of families who have children that are severe on the spectrum, they can get that funding to go to a private therapy center. There's two types of therapy. There's ABA and IBI. IBI is a more intensive therapy, 20 hours a week for someone's child. And a lot of times governments will write a check and a parent can go and choose what therapy center they want to take their child to. But it's different in every province and every state. This is just the situation in Ontario. We were fortunate that, Luke was deemed to be on the mild side. He's verbal. He talks with us. He engages socially with kids. But there was a time where he would not take a picture. He would go off in a corner and be by himself. In March, he started biting himself when he was frustrated. He would literally bite on his arm. And so all of these different things, it's a road that poses no straight path. This is what I tell everybody. And all these things, these examples of behavioral traits and situations, they change daily. And for us, in order to get that therapy to help him, we had to either pay for it out of our pocket or we had to wait for publicly funded therapy, which you're right, as you mentioned, was going to be up to 2 years. Well, no parent is going to want to do that if they can help it. So I did everything I could. I took my board game collection, put them up on Board Game Geek. I know Sean and Matt, they were retweeting with a lot of other fellow gamers, and I sold about 100 games, raised $2,000 or $3,000. That got us some help for a little while. We received some help from our families, but between that and daycare, we were paying $3,000 a month for therapy.
Parallel to all of this, you also found kind of a way to break through, a way to connect with your son.
We did, and it was purely by accident. It was one day I had some board games out, and he was very curious about what I was doing, and he decided out of the blue that he just wanted to start punching pieces out. And it was kind of funny because the game of choice at that moment was Yokohama, which, if people know, there's a lot of pieces in that game. So it was, it was kind of, it was kind of funny having that be the first box, wondering what I was doing. And he said, I want to help. So I started giving him the cardboard plates, and he started punching out the pieces. And at first I thought, well, this is great. I can just keep giving him boxes, right? But there is a price to pay for that. You got to remember that when we punch pieces out of a board game box, we're putting them in bags. So when he was done, like, I think A Feast for Odin hadn't been done yet, when he got that box and I saw what it looked like, I mean, it was just a pile, man. It was funny, and I got a good laugh out of it. But you know what? I didn't care what was inside that box. Him and I were engaging, and I gotta say, I just gotta backstep really, really quickly, because Geek and Son stepped up. With, you know, when we were going through that financial challenge, I just want to say really quickly, because they were the most important piece in our lives very early on. I had developed a friendship with Johnny Egan from Geek and Son while I was at Essen Spiele last year, and he heard about the news, and out of the blue, they emailed me and said, "Listen, we're going to help you. We're going to raffle off a table, and those funds are going to go to Luke's therapy." And I was so taken away by that. At first, I had a really hard time accepting that help, because, you know, my wife and I, we don't have terrible jobs, but at the same time, Alex, it's not something that you prepare for. You don't prepare to have money for something like that. You save for your kids' college, and you want to keep that money there as long as you can. And so I was really torn about, you know, what to do. And I went back to them and I said, "Listen, I will accept this help, but it can't just be for my family. We have to help 2 other families with this." And that's what we're going to do. We haven't, the raffle's actually going on right now. So you can go to geekandsson.com and you can still buy a ticket. I think they're only selling 1,000. I think they're about half sold right now. But that money is going to help 2 other families outside of Canada. And we're going to develop some sort of process where we can identify those families and help them out. So I'm really excited about that. So anyways, he continued on, and what was really cool was that at a certain point, I started to wonder if he would have the capacity to play, you know, even a hobby game. And even if he didn't play by the rules, would he be able to play with the pieces? So one of the first games I pulled out was Rhino Hero, because what kid doesn't love to build a card house? And so I knew he could possibly take those cards and just, let's see if we can make a tower. Let's not worry about placing the Rhino piece or the rules on the cards. Let's just play with the cards. And he had a great time. So then I pulled out Orchard, and that was the first time I saw evidence that he was going to be able to retain some rules. So I brought these games to his therapy center, and I left 3 hobby games with them for a month. And when that month was over, he was playing by himself, by the rules, and their approach to it was fantastic. They didn't use the words in the books. They developed visual cues for these kids. They had 2 other kids playing these games. This was fantastic. And I thought, man, this is what these families need to know about, are these games. Not Sorry, not Monopoly, not even Connect 4, even though, you know, there's probably some fun with the checker pieces or whatever. But I want families to know about these games by Haba, games by Blue Orange, where there is a way to play with them if they can't retain the rule set, but also games that these therapy centers could use that they're very excited about, and use them in a way where they can develop these visual cues and teach these kids, in many cases, to play these games. And this is a global opportunity. This is where we can reach out to any autism therapy center around the world and, you know, buy them a Haba Games pack, send it out to them, and start to develop these relationships. That's where I really started getting some ideas, and that's where the Path of Play project really started to cook in my head.
And so now we're at launch point. So what is Path of Play in its current form, near term? What are you guys looking to do in the near term?
Yeah, Path of Play is a registered non-for-profit organization in Canada that focuses on using the world of play to assist kids with special needs. And the reason why this focus for me has become so strong is because of the family game day that we had in my home. It was a very special day. If you go to pathofplay.com, you can scroll down on the homepage and you watch that 4-minute video. You'll see what that day was all about. But what I'm finding as time passes is we have a situation where we can develop an initiative that doesn't just throw games in front of kids. We have a really, really incredible opportunity to deal with a layer of inclusion at the grassroots. And if anything excites me the most about this project, it's that, yes, we want to help financially with, we want to develop a subsidiary program for families around the world. And if we can, kick families $500 a month for a year and help them out with the costs of the same kind of expenses that we had, we're still helping Luke. Hopefully in about a year or so, he can graduate from that program. But there's a lot of families out there that need that help. But we found what's more powerful than anything is having these kids together just playing. And I don't think there are many families that have thought of pinball or these kinds of games as something that can be therapeutic for them, but also an avenue where kids who are impacted by special needs and kids who are fortunate to not be impacted can actually be together and develop understanding and empathy. And in the end, they become each other's role models.
Absolutely beautiful. So to help support that initiative and to help support those goals, what are you guys doing?
So all of this is centered around a gaming marathon that we're live streaming from my basement on December 2nd. It's very much in tune with what entities do for like a heart and stroke ride. They develop a team of 10 or 20 people, and each of those people go out to achieve a set fundraising goal. So we're seeking out 3,000 gamers globally. And I have no idea. To tell you the truth, I'm going to come out and be honest with you. I'm learning so much as I go along. But I felt like if I could find 3,000 pinball players, board gamers or video gamers worldwide that would want to go and raise $100 through their social media pathways, it's a very small thing that they have to do. You post on Facebook a couple of times, hey, I'm doing this thing for this project. Here's the promo, and I'm on this team. Would you please support this cause? I have found so far with the people that have decided to come on board and be involved and create a team and build their team, that it's been very easy for them to raise these funds within, in some cases, a couple of hours. And so there are a lot of great projects out there, like Extra Life often comes to mind with board gamers. And a lot of times you got people like Stephanie Straw, she's going out and raising $5,000, like these amazing objectives. I want the effort to be really small. I don't want this to be a taxing experience for someone who decides that they want to get involved. And so when we go out and try and achieve these goals, we're going to celebrate on December 2nd with this live gaming stream. What's great is that when you develop a team, you may choose to have your gaming marathon the same day as us. You may choose another day. Your length of time of your marathon may be different from ours. There are no hard set rules because some of the people that come on board are going to be families that are impacted by autism, or they have children with other special needs, and they're not going to have that 12 or 24 hours to give. So a lot of this inspiration has come from, we did a walk for autism back in May with some friends, and it was just a 4-hour walk, and I posted twice on Facebook, and I raised $200 in 3 days. It was very, very easy to do, and it was a very successful campaign. And so the inspiration for Path of Play really comes from that experience that my wife and I had. And so now we're reaching out to people, and we're getting some really wonderful support starting out of the gate. And now it's just a matter of continuing to talk about it and expose this project to the board game community, the pinball community, the video game community. And the truth is, Alex, I'm learning very quickly, and I'm reminded that there's a lot of great people doing a lot of great things. And so it's easy to fall in love with your own idea, and I'm trying to remain very reserved about this. I don't want to roll this out like this is the thing that everybody should do. I respect the fact that people have their priorities, and we always care about something a lot more when we're impacted by it personally. That's I'm not saying that to sound mean or harsh or anything, but that's the truth. We respond to things. We become much more engaged in something when we have a personal or invested interest in it. And what I think is unique about this project, however, is that there's this inclusion thing. I find that a lot of the people that are coming on board, it's not so much about the autism part or the special needs part. I mean, it's a second layer, but I think it's this inclusion part. When I start talking about that layer, they really become interested in what we're trying to do, because, it's hard enough trying to fit in when you don't have a challenge, of autism or Down syndrome or whatever that special need may be. We've all had that job we didn't get that we wanted, or that date we wanted to go on and the girl or guy said no. I mean, trying to fit in is a hard thing to do no matter who you are. And when I start talking to people about what happened that day and how all these kids came down and celebrated one single similarity of enjoying play together, I think that's what people really gravitated to. And so to me, the idea of having this place here in Toronto that, might have 30 pinball machines in it and 100 board games and a quiet room if someone's having a sensory issue, and a therapist on site. And we can use that facility to branch out globally and share ideas and help people network so that the world of play can be used to bridge these two worlds together. Kids who are neurotypical, kids who, unfortunately do have a special need. That idea of being able to give them an opportunity to be together and develop understanding and empathy, to me, that's the strong point of this project. And I look at December 2nd as a celebration of our accomplishments, because all of our fundraising will be done by then. And we have some really, really interesting ideas where we hope to take the live streaming product to another level.
So, Mike, a big dream and already some great things underway. If folks want to be a part of this, what's the best way for them to do so?
I would say the best thing that you can do is go to pathofplay.com. If you haven't seen the promo, I would watch that first. It's near the bottom of our page. We have an FAQ up there where we answer some questions regarding, how to create a team, how to join a team, how's the money being used. We've actually broken down a budget of how we're going to be using the funds. We also have a board of directors. I don't know if you know this, but Sen-Fung Lim, who is one half of the Bamboozle brothers, designer of Junk Art and Godfather and New Dawn, a lot of these great games, right? Belfort, he's actually one of the directors, and Erica Hayes Boyoris, who's working with Daryl Andrews right now, designing a lot of games. They have a game that they're crowdfunding right now called Ink Monsters, and she's new to the design world, and she's come on as a director as well. So we have some people here who are available and willing to answer any questions that people may have. And that website is also the place where you can go and either make a contribution to our efforts. You can join a team. We have a Path of Play team that you can join and be a part of. You can also create a team. If you have a group of friends, 5 or 6 friends of yours that you want to gather and have a gaming marathon, you can create a team and take part in the marathon. And the great thing is that you may have, we've had a couple publishers, for example, like Tinkerbot Games contacted me, and they're putting together like this 30, 40 person team. But what's cool is that they're contacting people in different towns. So even the team itself, when they have the marathon, they're not all going to be in the same place. They're sort of coordinating this cluster of marathons at one time. So it's really cool to be able to hear from people that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, because that's where the validation really comes. You probably know from your own podcast that, when you first started producing it, you share it with your friends or people who you know, and they give you feedback. But when you start getting emails from people you've never met and they express some form of appreciation, that's when you really start to get that motivation to try and see this through.
Mike, I wish you the best of luck in these efforts, and I know a lot of our listeners, hopefully, will have heard you and connected with something you said there, and will at the very least go check it out, pathofplay.com. Mike, thank you so much, and best of luck in this effort.
Thanks so much, Alex. I appreciate it.